Well, thank you very much for having me here today. Before we start, let me try to distinguish what we mean by a public good and public services. Now, if you ask someone what he or she thinks public good is, very often the response would be education, health, infrastructure. Sometimes people would refer to public security. But what we have seen with the COVID-19 pandemic is that vaccines, just like good air quality or biodiversity or the internet, are other public goods that we all need. So what I'm trying to say here is that the definition and the scope of what a public good is has changed, and the range of public goods have grown exponentially, mainly for two reasons. The first reason is because people are demanding for more public goods and services from their governments, but also because we're having a new generation of public goods, which are those public goods that are generated by the internet and artificial intelligence, which we now call digital public goods, that we need to be able to respond to. And this is what UNDP needs to be able to address. Now, let me also spend a little bit of time just to explain what we mean by public service. A public service is basically the right that an individual has to be able to access public goods or to claim for public goods. But it's also the whole environment, the whole governance architecture that countries have to be able to plan, finance, and deliver those public services. But today, what is also extremely important beyond planning, financing, and delivering is the capacity that governments at national and local level need to have to be able to anticipate the public goods and the public services of the future. And this is why for UNDP, it's extremely important that we support countries in this new endeavor. Well, thank you. I think for at least two reasons. The first reason is obvious, and it's because of the mandate of UNDP, which is to improve life of people. But what I would like to focus here is more the aspects of governance of public goods and services. Because if you look at the way a country is delivering public services for its people, it basically gives you two indicators. The first indicator is the level of satisfaction that people have for their government. And here, more than the quality of service that is being provided, this indicator is a very solid signal of the level of expectation and the level of trust that people have for their government. And from a governance perspective, it's very important that we're able to listen to those signals and respond to those signals. The second indicator that you get is very much around the effectiveness and the efficiency of public sector and public administration to deliver public services. Now, of course, here you're looking at issues of inclusion, transparency, sustainability, but you're also looking today at the capacity of government at central as well as local level to anticipate the needs of the future, but also to be agile to respond to crisis and to very changing demands from people. And here, this is where I believe UNDP has a very important role to play. We, of course, need to continue to support public administration reforms, public sector reform, but we also need to help countries embrace innovation using, for instance, digitalization or social innovation to strengthen the way they're delivering public services. And here I mean, for instance, using systems approach to really better understand the issues that are happening on the ground. And then, for instance, portfolios to respond in a more integrated manner, in a more coordinated manner, also maximizing the resources, the limited resource that governments have. So well, thank you very much. Let me first start by saying that governance for public goods and services is a new workstream for UNDP. Our work is still very much work in progress. And as you know, I myself have only been in this role for the last 3 months or so. But if I need to summarize what the portfolio entails, I would say that it's basically 4 building blocks. The first block, and I might surprise you a little bit here, is legal identity. Why? Because if an individual does not have a birth certificate, or if he or she is not properly registered, then the person cannot access service or even claim for services. And likewise, if government does not know that there are groups of population that are not properly registered, then they cannot deliver those services. So legal identity is a fundamental right, and it's very much at the heart of our portfolio. But what I need to say here is that UNDP is not alone working on legal identity. We work within a coalition of 15 UN entities, including the Secretariat, which allows us to work at the political level, as well as to support countries with their legal identity agenda. The second building block is around public sector. And as I earlier said, here we need to continue to work to support public administration reforms, civil service reforms, human resources capacities. But we also need to work with central and local governments to help them define new pathways to deliver public services. And what I mean here is to help governments work beyond vertical and sector silos in delivering services. We need to identify mechanisms that will encourage and facilitate more integration and coordination and mobilization of resources to deliver services. And here in UNDP, we have interesting and very important tools and approaches, such as system thinking, such as portfolios, that can help government transform the way they plan, finance, and deliver services, and also build new coalitions, including with the private sector. The third area of work is around what we now call economic governance. As you know, the governance team used to have and still has a very solid expertise and portfolio around financial integrity and anti-corruption. But what we have now realized is that we need to expand that area of work to continue to support public financial management, to continue to support better alignment of budget with SDGs and national priorities, but also to be able to strengthen the environment and the incentive for private actors to invest and to support countries in meeting the SDGs. So this is the third area of work. And of course, here we do not work in silo. We also work very closely with the sustainable financing team in UNDP, as well as with the team on human rights, security, and rule of law. Now, the fourth and the last building block is around localization and local action. Why? Because it's important that we land what I've just described to you at a local level. And by local level, I mean either a rural area or an urban area where people live, so that we're able to maximize the expertise of our UNDP different teams. What we have seen recently is the need for each of our GPN teams to work in a more integrated manner at that local level, so that we're building on each other's expertise and we're not dissociating one project to the other. So the work that we're trying to do around localization and local action is to define mechanisms for us to better understand the local ecosystem together, to identify there what are the leverage points and what are the accelerators that we need to be able to work on. And once this is defined, put together in motion the different teams in UNDP to respond to that very specific context. So these are basically the 4 areas that that are part of this portfolio of public goods and services. But let me finish here by saying something important. What we're trying to develop is not a blueprint. It's only a series of solutions that have been tested that can easily be either adapted or replicated to different local contexts. I mean, by local context, I mean country context. And beyond the solutions, we're also trying to identify the financing mechanisms that countries can leverage to be able to deliver on those tools. Thank you. In many, many ways. I mean, as I just said, the portfolio on public goods and services is still very much work in progress. And the community of practice is a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful platform where we meet with colleagues from bureaus, from regional hubs, from country offices, where we can share experience, where we can share our concerns. But it's also a space where we can test and sometimes validate some of the assumptions that we have when we design those new policies and those new offers. But what I also find fascinating in the community of practice is not so much the opportunity that it gives me to engage with my fellow governance colleagues, but it's also very much the opportunity that I have to meet with colleagues from different teams across the organization. And this is very important if we want to mainstream governance in different portfolios. So we need to understand what are the entry points, what are the mechanisms to bring governance in those portfolios, and how we can do this in a, I would say, gradual and sustainable manner. Now, what I also find very important, and this is maybe a request to be considered, particularly from a governance angle. As we all know, I mean, government, be it at central or local level, are today facing multiple crises and complexities. And our country offices are very often the first witness of those changes and the request from governments. And we needed to find a space where our country offices can come, present a situation and a challenge that the country is facing, and have a space where collectively we can discuss it and we can identify solutions that can contribute to supporting and to addressing that issue. And I think that the community of practice would be a wonderful tool and a wonderful forum to further help our country offices not only define the solutions, but share some of the concerns and the challenges that they have with colleagues from other country offices, as well as from other bureaus and regional hubs. Thank you.